Hola guys, ¿qué pasó? This is Hala Pablo. All right, we're going to look at some new swings for this week. Things are popping off, and we want to try to catch some of these gains before they distribute. Even if something's pumping and you've missed the initial pump, what you want to do is wait for the reconsolidation. Hopefully it reconsolidates. It's just not one pump and then it makes a top and then it distributes. Usually these cryptos, like this one for example, LPTUSD, will after coming out of a bottom, we'll get that up thrust. You see this Elliott wave here. This one, here's the 1, 2. Well, this is the 3, and then the 5, and then it'll come back down. What it does is it forms this as it seeks to close out this liquidity void, or this macro void here. It forms what looks like a cup. And this is where you get the traditional cup and handle trading patterns from usually a single or a double bottom, which on another fractal would look like a spring, like a terminal shakeout on a Wyckoff schematic. But what they really are, bottoms out. And this is back when Bitcoin hit 17,000, it hit this low. And then it comes back up, it refills the liquidity void, and then oftentimes it'll begin to reconsolidate laterally. And so that's what it's doing now. What these sometimes turn into are handles in the cup and handle. And it'll retest the neckline, and then after it retests, if it passes, it'll continue to mark up. So it's a continuation pattern. And so this right here proves to be a reaccumulation zone. This right here, this reaccumulation. So if you miss this initial pump, and say you like you're here and you see it's marked up, you look on your exchange and it says it's up 27% or whatever, and you're like, shit, man, I missed it. Just wait till it begins to reconsolidate. You look for this supply comes in heavily, which usually retraces, causes everything to retrace maybe 15 to 20%. And then you'll notice the price doesn't fall any further. It comes back up to the automatic rally, does a secondary test, and if it's going to reconsolidate or reaccumulate, it's going to continue in this pattern, in this trading range. The top being the automatic rally, where the the top is the automatic rally, and the bottom is the selling climax. And so in between those, the price will begin bouncing around. And if it's not going to just wholesale just distribute, it should stay in that range. And another way you can tell if it's going to reaccumulate versus distribute is you look at the on the pullbacks. You look at the supply volume in the vertical bar, and if and on the lower time frames, ideally, not on the higher time frames. Like this is a 4-hour, but say I were to take this down to the 30-minute. I usually don't go down this far. A good forensic time frame is 45 minutes that I use. And let's just get rid of this here so we could see the volume more. So we're seeing an increase on some of the pullbacks in supply volume. For example, let's see. Here you see how these bars are growing there. But then here we see a decrease. And here we see a decrease. See this higher supply bar and then this lower one. Those are the two predominant bars. And then the same thing here, this high bar, and then this is like a lower volume supply. And then here, this is a good telltale right here on this these last couple hours. We're seeing a noticeable diminishment in supply, not so much in demand. Now demand has taken the predominance. You see that here? And so we see, okay, well then what's going on? So we look up at the price action and we see clearly there is a retest. What happened was the price action came up through the 0.5 fib. That's this yellow line. It's trading range midpoint. Comes up to trading range resistance, and here it retests, reconsolidates. So we basically have a reconsolidation within a reconsolidation. And what the price action is doing here is it's retesting the the trading range resistance to see if it can create a new support line out of it. And if it is successful in flipping the resistance to support, that's when we could usually expect on the next leg up. But the new support must be established first. A lot of new traders, newbies, will jump in at this point because they see this demand bar like this one. It's like, oh, it's going to continue to pump. Well, not necessarily. What it's doing is it's retesting, and it may or may not pass. How many times have you seen it come up? You get another big demand bar, and then you jump in thinking it's going to go to the 618 Fibonacci. Instead, it maybe touches the 1, and then suddenly you get boom. You get a big supply spike downward, and it just cancels everything out, and then you start distributing. It's because we didn't get a conclusive retest on the trading range resistance. There wasn't a clear flip, so we need to see several demand bars predominating on top of the trading range resistance turn support, and then and only then is it safe to get in with the assumption that we're going to continue the markup. That being said, that's exactly what I'm waiting for in LPT. I'm waiting to get confirmation on this on this flip, and once it flips, then I can reasonably expect the price action to continue to fill these liquidity voids, these macro liquidity voids. The first, well, the most notable one would be if it comes up to this area here, which would be the in between the 1.272 and the 1618, and mitigate this order block up here, close out this macro liquidity void, and then usually what we'll see is some more, if it does that, some more reconsolidation, and then it might put a third leg up and close out this the next macro liquidity void coming up in order. So that would be the liquidity void number 3. So all that's possible, but usually it distributes before it hits the 3. But you never know, and everything is contingent on Bitcoin maintaining its current trajectory with bullish bias. If Bitcoin decides to retest the prior low and close out its own lower liquidity void down to 17,000, then it would probably drag most all these alts down with it to some degree. So 90% of the alts are indexed to Bitcoin's price action. So that's just the way it is until they decouple or depair from Bitcoin, if that ever happens. So that's one of the things I'm looking at now, and I've shared this crypto with my trading group. There are several other cryptos that I'm looking at right now. These are all potentials that I have eyes on. Shipping is another one that marked up, had a nice markup. I didn't get in it. It's one of those ones where you wake up and it's like, oh man, this one's pumping pretty hard, and so you never jump in. I never chase pumps. I don't chase the green fire. What I do is I look for, if I miss a pump, I look for a reaccumulation gains if possible. So I wait for it to settle back down like it did here, find a floor, like we have a two drop floor here, and wait for it to reconsolidate and see if it's going to reconsolidate. If the spread gets narrow and starts forming like this, you see this arrowhead kind of pattern here. That's a typical bullish. That's a bullish continuation pattern because the spread is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and also down here the volume is diminishing on both supply and demand. It's getting smaller and smaller. So we have the higher lows. That is a divergence to the lower highs in the vertical bar volume, and that denotes accumulation or absorption. And it just means that the coin is being reabsorbed. The market makers took their profit up here. They sold into the pump. The newbies FOMO'd in, and they got trapped up here. And then the market makers, the sharks, guys like me, will sell off into the pump and take our profits, and then it'll mark back down, and then if it's meant to be, if the powers that be desire to pump it again or to mark it up further, then it'll begin to reconsolidate, and there'll be like a rebuying reconsolidation campaign. And like I said, the way you know is that the spread gets smaller and smaller. Now, if this is going to distribute, then usually we have a series of lower lows, and with the spread increasing, not getting smaller like an arrowhead, like a symmetrical arrow pattern, but instead widening and expanding. And then on the pullbacks, when it goes down, we're seeing the supply volume building. So we have divergence in supply and in the downward price action trajectory. And on the up thrusts, we see the demand getting smaller and smaller. So demand is weakening, supply is building. That's usually a sign of distribution that's going to go down. But we don't really see that right here. We see both supply and demand diminishing. We see supply clearly diminishing on the pullbacks. So that leads me to believe that shipping is going to put another leg up, and if it does, we could get some good gains out of here. Even though we missed the initial pump, we could still catch the reaccumulation rocket, and if it pumps back up to the 618, which is conservative at this point, I would put a limit sell at 618. We're looking at 61%, 60% gain. Not bad, and this sucker can shoot up again overnight. So that's what I'm looking at. Shipping, basically things that I look for. This one has a good chance of distributing. You see how this supply here, see how the spread is getting wider and wider and wider. Yeah, that's usually the calling card for distribution, but not necessarily, because on this last we saw supply diminishing on the pullback, and supply has gotten smaller here. So that's something that I'm looking at. That might just reverse and suddenly begin retesting this resistance up here if I were to draw a regression trend. And if I see this trying to retake the resistance and flip it to support, just like we saw with shipping, which could be happening with LPT and shipping, then boom, this would be something. This would be a candidate to jump in and ride up. OP, yeah, same thing. Got this cup, and if we can expect like a reconsolidation along the neckline. I'll look for the spread to get smaller and maybe even go downward a bit. The handles usually have sort of like a downward regression, and then I'll watch for the signs in the volume spread, and this could also mark back up and be a continuation, typical cup and handle. And so these are all ones that I'm looking at and that I share with my group. If I think they're going to pop, I go ahead and release the preliminary signals to my group. They get the cream of the crop. They support me through Patreon. Very affordable, I think, for the value that they get on the swings. 80 to 85%. I have 80 to 85% accuracy on hitting these targets. At least a 272 getting hit on these. It's a good 80 to 85%, which I think is excellent, in comparison. So yeah, we're looking at these, and I'll keep you all updated on it. ApeCoin, 1 inch. 1 inch is interesting because 1 inch is involved somewhat in the Celsius short squeeze. It's the exchange that the Celsians who are buying liquidity, who are buying Cell token off FTX, or moving them to MetaMax, are putting their limit cells, high limit cells, like $100 limit cells, on the 1 inch DeFi exchange. So I'm looking at 1 inch too to see if it has any residual effect from the Coinbase thing. Excuse me, not Coinbase, Celsius, from the Celsius short squeeze. So that's why this is on here. XTZ, I saw Tezos move in the other day, and so these are all potential. So all right, just wanted to share a little bit with you. At the end of the week, we'll go over and do a recap on all the gains that we collected. We've already collected some gains from several tokens that I've closed out, and we'll go over those later this week. But that's a bit for now. This is going on for 15 minutes. I always seem to just go over on these things. But anyway, if you found this informative, subscribe, like at least. Subscribe, I don't give a shit, you know, but like it, and that tells me, you know, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about all this, and if you have any questions, you can always just reach out to me. I try to answer each and every question and request ASAP. So, all right, guys, have a good week. Happy safe trading. Strong hands, always strong hands, and be smart traders. And all right, we'll talk to you soon. All right, guys, adios and take care. Bye bye.